All right, well, a few more questions. We got a few questions about recent comments Dave Meltzer has made about AEW. Let's ask these. This first one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mike Barcombe. What are your thoughts on Dave Meltzer reporting that, quote, virtually everybody on the active WWE roster except Roman Reigns has made preliminary contact with AEW?
Well, you think Randy Orton, by the way, has fucking called?
Well, apparently, but let me stop you. Apparently, Randy did before he got his contract with WWE. Apparently, he used it as a bargaining chip.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And that's, do I think that there's absolutely nobody that wants to leave the WWE and go to AEW? Of course not. There's been misused guys and guys that just ain't happy and that what the fuck. There's also a few guys that probably think, well, maybe I can get some more money. And it'll be easier because they don't run a full schedule and the WWE is going to eventually. Who knows if AEW will? And there's a lot of guys probably smart like Randy that said, well, I don't want to go anywhere, but there's a fucking billionaire over there and Vince has been giving out raises. So let me do my exploratory phone calls so that I can report back to Vince that I've talked to him and he'll give me a bunch more money to stay. And that's probably for anybody figured in any kind of top position in the WWE, that's what they would be doing. But I mean, and here's the thing, Vince has said this to guys in the past. Vince said this to me in the Midnight Express when we first went up and met with him in 1986. If you don't want to come, then use the fact that I've talked to you to get a better offer from Crockett or from whoever that the person, he will say that. Because usually he's been the guy that gave the offer that somebody else had to beat and couldn't. Or usually couldn't. Now, I don't know whether he's saying that these days because there's been a time or two where people have come along and can beat that fucking offer. And have. But he used to actually tell guys that, hey, even if you don't want to come, use me as leverage, because he knew the guys would remember him saying that, because later on, 6 weeks, 6 months, a year, whatever the fuck, they're not going to be happy because they're wrestlers. So, of course, a time is going to come soon where they're not happy where they're at. And they'll remember that Vince said, well, I tried to make you some extra money, even if you didn't want to make a move, that he baby-faced them. So all of those things are true, but Dave, poor Dave, and I'm not even going to get started, but he tries to word everything in such a way that it looks like that people would rather be in a goddamn Sahara desert with no water than be left out of AEW. It's just the greatest thing in the world, and nothing, everything has to be framed or couched or positioned in what makes AEW sound so wonderful, like it's Shangri-La. It's just people are starting to see, and I hate, for Dave, we've talked about this. I hate people now shitting all over him because we tried to defend his credibility for so long, because on the things we were defending him for, historical pieces and knowledge of yesteryear, he was correct in every case. But it's just, he's gone so far now with this shit that he can't back up. He can't get out of it. Like I said earlier in the program, he's digging that fucking hole in the wrong direction. And people are starting to, even people that have known him for so long are starting, what the fuck? He can't leave it alone. I don't know.
Well, sadly, we have heard that from people who have been longtime friends. And I think one of the big things that you could say is that it's because if you talk to him, it's one thing. If you know him, it's another thing. But the Twitter behavior, I think, is what causes a lot of people to shake their heads. And because
that's not Dave. I mean, we've all known each other for all these decades, and people would expect that from me. And they'd be right. I'd be a fucking wise ass. But the whole thing is, and I know Dave has a wide social circle, but I don't think it's any secret that the majority of people that Dave Meltzer has interacted with for the last 40 years are either people inside the wrestling business or people who are very fond of or fans of or want to be involved in the wrestling business. And the longer you've known him, the more ridiculous what he says now sounds. And the people that are supporting him are not the people who have known him for 40 years. In most cases, they're the people that just have been reading him for 5. And he's saying that their favorite wrestlers are actually good. So what are they not going to disagree with him? But the people that have known Dave for so long are like, what the fuck? He used to critique fairly and truthfully the WWF Saturday night's main events that did fucking 10 ratings on network television and were shitty fucking phony ass looking wrestling shows. He would say this shitty ass phony looking wrestling show drew an audience of 26 million people or whatever. It could be both. It didn't have to be one or the other. I don't understand.
Well, I think one of the reasons I've heard it, and quite frankly, I've experienced it, that people think that it's odd with Dave and AEW is that someone could tweet something out about AEW and Dave will just jump on that tweet, even if he's not tagged on it, he's not a part of it, and just in a very condescending fashion, try to put that person down for not blindly accepting all that AEW is, all that modern wrestling, specifically in AEW is. You're not allowed to critique that in any way.
You're just left behind.
You're just left behind.
You're just out of touch. Just been left behind. Yeah. When the fucking train leaves the station heading for the fucking broken bridge over the gulch, I'll stay here. Y'all take that fucking train.